The 8th race weekend of the BMW IBSF Bobsleigh and Skeleton World Cup in Sigulda in Latvia. The series finale for 5 disciplines: men and women's skeleton, monobob and women's bobsleigh, and the two-man bob. A double race weekend for two-man here on this tight, twisty and demanding Latvian track. First up on a Friday that was relatively clear, if cloudy, was men's skeleton. Into the closing stages of the season, the last slide for everybody. Olympic champion Christopher Groothair lying in 5th place. The points leader needed a 9th place or better in the final run to guarantee himself a first ever Crystal Globe as the World Cup champion. Best ever result in Sigulda though, only a 7th place finish. So top 5 was going well. And this track has plenty of hazards. It's so easy to give away a quarter or half a second. But Groothair was fine in his second run, taking the lead with 4 to go. Only 100th faster in the first of the 2 runs was Felix Kaisinger. He's got an electrifying start, but he has struggled to put together consistent runs this year, and Sigulda was to prove no different. The early start advantage soon melted away in the welter of corners that make up the middle section of this Latvian track. And then as they got down to the long, fast part at the bottom, the speed was simply not there. He dropped behind into the final corner, the 270-degree Kreisel, and slipped a spot. The final 3 sliders were all British. Craig Thompson in 3rd place after the first heat on a sled from coach Martin Stukos that he'd first used in the World Championships just 2 weeks earlier. After a great first run, the second started off promisingly as well. But then in the lower labyrinth, things started to get away from him and the timing was not quite perfect. And that is where the speed vanishes. Out of corner 14, having to stabilise the ship. Not enough speed on board to stay in front of Christopher Groothair, and for the second time this month, a medal slipped from his grasp. 2 to go. Marcus Wyatt needed a big race in Sigulda to overhaul Germany's Axel Jung for 3rd place in the overall season rankings and grab his first Crystal Globe. And he had a great second run going as well. He was only 1700ths off the lead in the first heat and perhaps fancied his chances of taking gold. He would need a big run and he produced it clean out of 14, keeping his speed alive, ensuring that it would be Wyatt in the leader's box as the final sled of the season got ready to go. We would have a British winner. But would it be Marcus Wyatt, who won the season opener, or Matt Weston, looking for victory number 5 of his World Cup campaign? Weston, the newly crowned world champion, left no doubt. Clean early on, clinical in the tight labyrinth sections. He still had plenty of speed on board as the track opened up in front of him out of corner 14. He was racing away to victory. 3rd best speed was plenty to claim win number 5 of the season, and with it his first Crystal Globe as the season's runner-up. The most successful winner of the year claimed the top spot from Marcus Wyatt and the World Cup champion Christopher Groothair. The world champion and only denied the World Cup crown because his sled popped out of the groove at the start in Park City, finishing 18th. Christopher Groothair is the World Cup champion, ahead of Matt Weston and Marcus Wyatt. Skies remained overcast on Friday afternoon for the season finale and the chase for the Crystal Globe in the women's skeleton competition. Into the closing stages of the season, Kimberly Boss lying second in the chase for the overall season honours, the Crystal Globe that she won in 2022, chasing down the leader of the points, Tina Hermann. But first she had to recover from a disappointing first heat that left her in only 8th spot. On this track, where trip hazards lie in every corner, it's so easy to give speed away, and you have to be pretty precise to keep it on board. Boss had a much better second run. Having come from 11th to gold in Innsbruck a week earlier, she looked like she might be trying to do the same thing in Sigulda. In a field of maybe 17 disappointed sliders out of 17 after an untidy first heat, Suzanne Kreyer lay just ahead of Boss after the first run. She didn't have much in hand, only 0.06 of a second, and when she made a mistake into the first couple of corners, even that advantage was going away, and in a hurry. The newly crowned world champion had been in superb form in St. Moritz, but couldn't hang on to her speed here in Sigulda. The season finale was going the wrong way. The bottom of the track was just too long for the little speed that she had left. The line, too much of a stretch. She dropped behind into second place. Boss the leader. And Boss was still in the leader's box as we got to the final 5 sleds of the season. Kim Malmens missed the first 3 races of the year, breaking her ankles in a training crash pre-season in Whistler. She still struggles to walk comfortably, but her push is among the 10 fastest in the field, and there is nothing wrong with her driving. And so she proved again, finding the speed once more down this Sigulda track, her fluid style keeping the pace alive all the way down at the bottom in the long open run to the Kreisel that rounds off this run. She dived for the line to take the lead by a 10th, but there were still 4 to go. Just outside the medals, Great Britain's Olympic bronze medalist from 2018, Laura Dees. A change in equipment and the new coaching lineup has revitalised the British slider this season, and again it showed. Consistency, form and speed most importantly. The speed dropped away midway through the run, but she held her form at the bottom of the track, just bringing enough back into the closing few hundred metres to steal the lead away from Kim Malmens with 3 to go. Could there be a final medal of the season on the cards? Dees was still in the leader's box as the last sled of the year came to the line. Germany's Tina Hermann, the first heat leader. Brogan Crowley had dropped out of a potential bronze, Mimi Reniva out of a potential silver medal as they had disappointing second heats. Would the same be true of Tina Hermann? Because she starts slower than Laura Dees, she immediately dropped into the red, but stabilised that gap at less than 2/10 and then turned on the afterburners, doing what Hermann does so well, finding speed at the bottom. But had she found enough, it was going to be desperately close. 0.05 of a second, she claimed victory from Laura Dees, and with it confirmed herself for the second time in her career as the World Cup champion. But it was close, and she knew it. A third win of the season for Tina Hermann, a season-high silver for Laura Dees, and a second straight bronze for Kim Malmens. The World Cup leader becomes the World Cup champion. Gold for Tina Hermann, silver for Kimberly Boss, last year's winner, and Mimi Reniva claims the bronze for the 3rd time in her career. Persistent drizzle on Saturday morning for the first track action Women's Monobob World Cup, and the destiny of the first ever Monobob Crystal Globe would be decided. A tight battle for the medals in Sigulda, with 5 sleds covered by a 10th of a second from second place down to 6th. Kim Kilicki has had 1 World Cup medal so far this season in what is still a difficult sled for her. She doesn't have a handle on the monobobs the way she does on the regular 2-seat sled. A good run from Angia Grecu on what is a track that the Romanian has always fared well on had put Kilicki under pressure, but a great exit from the critical corners at the bottom of the track kept the speed alive into the Kreisel that rounds off the run here, and Kilicki would move into the leader's box with a strong second heat. Despite crashes in training in the monobob and the women's bobsleigh, Cynthia Appiah had a good first run, and a brand new start record got her second heat underway in fine form. She kept that speed alive in the tight early part of the track with its 8-corner labyrinth, leading down to the fast and open flowing bottom. Out of corner 14, it's critical to keep the sled straight, and she did a pretty decent job. And out of corner 15, skidding it away. That was going to rob her of the speed she needed, though. She would drop behind Kalicki and might be out of the medals. Melanie Hassler of Switzerland, only 900 up on Kalicki after the first of the two heats. And the Swiss in third place after heat one, looking for her first ever mono medal. Early on, it looked as though she had everything under control, but the speed started to disappear. And with it, the time was erased. Only fifth fastest down at the bottom, and big height in 15 led to a skiddy run into the Kreisel. She was behind and not going to recover. She dropped not one, but 3 places out of the medals. Kalicki still led. Hassler's chase for a medal would have to wait for another season. Yingqing of China had had a fantastic first run to leave her in silver medal position. It would be a first for herself and for China if she could hang on in the medals. Previous best for Ying in the World Cup had been a 12th place finish. This was way above expectation, but training had gone well, the first heat went well, and the second heat was a fantastic run too. She didn't quite have the speed to hang on in front of Kalicki, but she would be a medalist for the first time ever, and the Chinese coaches were jubilant.
Yes!
The first heat leader was Kaylee Humphries. She was absolutely buzzing in her first appearance on this Sigulda track. It plays to all her strengths. She loves a driver's track, and this is exactly that. The first heat lead and a great second start. Humphries made no mistakes. One little tap out of corner 14, but she was building her advantage all the way. And it was clear that it would be Humphries on the top step of the podium as she crossed the line, nearly half a second up. Kalicki bowed out from the leader's box with her best result as a silver medal. Shauna Roebuck, the coach, helping Kaylee Humphries get the best out of this track. Kalicki taking silver, first ever medal for Yingqing and China, tying for the bronze with Cynthia Appiah. But that fourth and final World Cup victory of the season confirms what we expected coming in, that Kaylee Humphries is the World Cup champion, ahead of Lara Nolte and Cynthia Appiah. Fans, officials and athletes alike had to brave squally snow showers on Saturday afternoon for the first of the pair of two-man races. The track in Sigulda was built by the USSR during the Cold War for training its drivers. It was intended to be the toughest in the business, and it still remains very much living up to that mark, as Marcus Treichel found out, crashing off the fast corner 15 just before the Finnish Kreisel. The crew were okay, but his hopes of a medal had disappeared. Hopes of a medal remained for Latvia with young Emil Sapoulis. He's been having a really strong season. Second fast start in the first heat and the second with teammate Mats Miknes, and the young Latvian found more speed down his home ice than he had in the first heat, improving by 0.2 of a second. It looked as though this was a strong challenge for a medal. A long skid from 15 to 16 may have taken speed out of the sled, but it was more than enough to push Mickey Vogt of Switzerland out of the leader's box with 4 to go. The gap from third to sixth position had been only 11 hundredths, with 5 sleds vying for the medals. Next up, Germany's Max Illmann, with Joshua Tascher reunited with his driver. Illmann competing in just this one World Cup. His place will be taken on day 2 by the Amour brothers, so he had to make this count. 4th place after the first heat, 2 hundredths out of the medals. He was looking to move up. First job was to deal with Emiz Sapoulis, and a flying run from Illman did exactly that, building from 200s to 3900s. That left the pressure on Brad Hall and Taylor Lawrence. In the face of the wind at the start, an error in loading cost them time, then a hit on the track before corner 2. The speed was gone. Brad was immediately dropping backwards. Only the third best speed, but 4 tenths behind the leader, Max Illman. He'd had 200s in hand from the first heat, and none of that would survive to the line. Hall dropped down towards the tail of the top half dozen. Third place with 2 to go. Illman was in the medals, and so was his brakeman Joshua Tascher. The final 2 sleds, both German. Francesco Friedrich and Alexander Schuller, a fearsome combination here on this track. Friedrich's had 7 wins out of 10 previous World Cup starts and a silver medal and 1 12th place, and that was the first race last year with Alex Schuller. This year, no mistakes though. It wasn't the greatest first heat, and it wasn't the greatest second heat either. A couple too many errors creeping in, but Friedrich still had enough to put fellow Altenberger Max Illman behind him and take the lead with 1 to go. Only 200s in front though. It was close. The final sled, Johannes Lochner and Georg Fleischhauer. They've combined 5 times this season for 4 World Cup wins and World Championship 2-man gold. And their 6th race together seemed to be following exactly the same pattern. Strong starts despite the gusting snowy wind, and despite the winds blowing the sled off track, still Johannes Lochner managed to build his lead. 1400s ahead of Francesco Friedrich, his arch rival from the first heat. 3600s ahead at the line. A kiss from his wife to congratulate him. 1 more 2-man race to go in the season to decide the fate of the Crystal Globe. And Hansi Lochner with 1 hand on it, beating Friedrich again in the 2-man. And that means he goes into the season's finale with a chance of the overall Crystal Globe in 2-man for the very first time in his career. It could be a great finish to the season. After a cold, crisp night, the track was faster on Sunday morning for the women than it had been in the Monobob race a day earlier. Final run of the season for Switzerland's 24-year-old Melanie Hassler, 25-year-old brakewoman Yasmin Naif in the sled for the first time since Innsbruck, December 2020. A good start to put them in contention, and they were trying to stay ahead of leader Wai Mingming of China. Both Wai and Hassler had a previous best of 4th place on this track. Wai's a year earlier, Hassler's 2 years previously. 500s in it, into the closing stages of the run. Melanie needed to be super clean. The speed was good enough. It was going to be close at the line, but she was just in front. Hassler led as we got to the top 4, including China's Ying Qing. The 25-year-old had previously only been a best of 6 position in the Sigulda track, and her previous World Cup best was exactly that. With Wang Yu behind her, they produced 2 great starts, and Ying really driving well. Their Latvian coach Yanis Minins' teachings clearly working well. Down at the bottom of the track, skidding a little from 14 to 15, and again from 15 to 16, but she let it fly through the Kreisel and came across the line to seal her best ever World Cup result. The previous day, Kaylee Humphries had won on her Sigulda debut after nearly 20 years of competing. Never having been to this track didn't seem to slow her down. The Monobob winner was tied in the silver medal position in the women's race after the first heat. Having tied the time set by Kim Kalicki, Kaylee went first to break the tie, and it was another top-class drive. This busy Sigulda track really responds well to what Kaylee does best, drive the sled. She kept the speed up all the way down, denying Ying Qing the hope of a medal. She put herself in the lead with 2 to go. Kim Kilicki and Annabel Gallander had won the season opener in Whistler in November. They took a second win the next week in Park City, but have not been on the top step of the podium since. Reunited once more, could they work their magic? They were only a hair's breadth behind first heat leader Lara Nolte, with better speed than Kaylee Humphries on the way down the run, just crept a fraction in front of the US slider. And even a long skid up to the Kreisel wasn't enough to rob her of the speed she needed to grab the initiative, a tenth in front with a sled to go. Clearly now we would have a German winner, but would it be first-time winner Kim Kilicki or a second gold in Sigulda for Lara Nolte? After the disappointment of crashing out of the Women's World Championships a couple of weeks earlier, she'd retaliated with gold in Innsbruck before coming to Sigulda. She had no intention of dropping her guard here either. She'd been 900s up after the first heat. That gap shrank and then started to grow once more. Towards the end, the fastest part of the track, she had the top speed where it counted. Victory in Sigulda for a second time in 3 races would go to Lara Nolte. The third win of her World Cup campaign, more than anyone else. She's only been off the podium once in the season opener in Whistler. Kim Kilicki takes silver, Kaylee Humphries the bronze, ahead of Ying Qing, and the overall World Cup title also going to Lara Nolte. Kim Kilicki and Kaylee Humphries taking crystal globes in the silver and bronze positions. The final two-man race of the season, and Sunday afternoon was as snowy as Saturday. Wind an extra factor, slowing them down at the start. Brad Hall with Greg Cackett on the back of the sled for the second day of two-man action in Sigulda. The pair had last pushed together in Lake Placid before Christmas. Brad lying in 5th place after the first of the 2 heats, seriously in touching distance of the medals. Could he produce another great run in the final descent of the season? 2 silver medals the previous season here showed that he has got the ability, and the speed was there as well. Towards the bottom of the run, easing Lee Chun-jan out of the leader's box and throwing down the gauntlet to the remaining 4 sleds tightly packed in front of him. Switzerland's Mickey Vogt and Sandro Mikkel had been just 600ths of a second in front of the British sled after their first trip. Already twice a bronze medal winning duo on this track. They'd been in 4th place after the first heat, and 2 were looking to move up. Creeping away from Brad Hall, a little better speed down at the bottom and just a fraction less problem out of corner 14. Still with speed to spare at the lower parts of the track. The gap would come down, but it would be enough for him to take the lead over Brad Hall by 500ths of a second with 3 to go. Into the final 3, and a dead heat for the silver medal position, as we'd seen in the women's race earlier. Francesco Friedrich and Torsten Margis, reunited once more, had tied the time set for second, and so they went first. Friedrich is a 7-time two-man winner on this track in 11 previous races. Beaten into silver medal position the day before by Johannes Lochner. Was he going to let that happen again? Out of 15, he ducked his head out of sight. He knew where the Kreisel was. He didn't need to look to steer, saving every 100th across the line. 800ths in front and guaranteed a medal. But of what colour? This was Friedrich's 91st two-man World Cup race. Adam Amour, his rival, starting his 8th two-man bobsleigh race of any kind ever. With his brother Izam behind him, they produced a great start, but the technique and the speed of Friedrich is almost unmatchable, and Adam Amour slipped a fraction back. With the tightly packed sleds at the top of the field, it was touch and go whether he would even stay in a medal position. He didn't have the speed of Mickey Vogt at the bottom. He was behind leader Friedrich. Would he be in the leader's box? Third place with 1 to go. A medal was still a chance for the brothers. But a slender one. Johannes Lochner's wife looking on as he and Georg Fleischauer, one of only 2 crews that remained together after day 1, started once more. Another crushing getaway. Since this duo combined in Lake Placid before Christmas, they have not stepped out of the sled without a gold medal. 5 consecutive World Cup wins and the 2-man World Championship. And that string will continue into next season because Johannes Lochner quite simply was uncatchable in the second day of action as he had been in the first. It is their 6th straight 2-man World Cup victory, and they've taken the World Championships as well. Francesco Friedrich silver, Mickey Vogt his 3rd bronze on the track, but 2 wins for Johannes Lochner confirm that he is the World Cup champion in 2-man for the very first time in his career. Another fantastically exciting season of IBSF bobsleigh and skeleton sliding drawing to a close on a fitting stage, the tight, twisty and demanding Sigulda track. That's it for 2022-2023. We look forward to seeing you again next season for lots more sliding action.